Once you have cut the heads off the golf clubs and you've stripped the handles off the cores, you then want to test fit your cores and then measure the total length. Golf clubs, they're tapered differently, so they'll often be longer one way or the other. This is the way I want to put these cores together. I tape where it fits, and then I come back and kind of overlay it, and you want to get 10 to 15 centimeters in the middle, so that I've taped where I'm going to then cut that core down to size. Alright, so we've cut on the tape so it doesn't split. We can then unwrap the tape. Now we actually want to put a little bit of tape over the end of the core. It's hollow to stop any of the epoxy coming up in the core. First time you stick it on, there's always some dust. Second time, you could then put it on. If you then take a file and just run it around the edge, you can get the smallest amount of tape needed as it abrades the tape, and then you can just pull it off, leaving just a little circle of tape on the end. The next step is taking a little bit of very squishy open cell foam, putting it inside the core, and then ramming that down. And that's going to stop the epoxy running all the way down your core, because you only need it where the cores are touching. That has that foam now seated in place. Now we are ready to use the epoxy. I'm using a 72-hour epoxy, and it's ready to go. The other thing I'll be doing is I'll be gluing my pommel onto the end of my core. I use a nice hard foam. It's a fishing rod grip. It doesn't squish very much. You can sand it, you can cut it, and it makes really nice pommels when epoxied on. You want to get some epoxy inside the tube, and then a reasonable amount of epoxy on the first half or so of your male piece. And you want to make sure you've got a little bit of epoxy up the top, but you're probably going to have overflow there. Twisting as you go in helps stop the epoxy from going everywhere. And once you get all the way in, you want to just seat it nice and tight. Then you can get rid of any excess epoxy you've got there. I like to make sure I've got a little bit of epoxy on the outside of the join, so there's not like a sharp step. And once I've got that bit of epoxy there, I will then grab some tape. I use blue painter's tape, and just gently, you don't want to squeeze the epoxy, you just want to contain it. Wrap that tape around and make sure it's sealed at both ends. Then leave your core to, or leave the epoxy to cure and the core to set up. This epoxy is a multiple day epoxy. It takes between 24 and 72 hours. So in about 2 days' time, I will undo the tape and I'll start building the rest of the core. While we're here and we've got the epoxy mixed up, we're also going to glue up our pommel. To do this, I'm going to put some epoxy inside the hollow part of the pommel. Make sure we're getting all the way up there. And then we put a little bit of epoxy on here to make sure it seals properly. Importantly, we haven't put tape on the end of this bit of the core because we don't actually mind if some epoxy goes on the inside. That's just going to help hold the pommel on better. Oops, pushed a little bit too far. Right, now, again, I'm just going to put that little bit of tape around there to contain the epoxy so we don't make a mess as it cures. That's our core. We'll now leave that to set up for the next few days. Alrighty, we are now going to start taping the pompon up. Because I'm using this wider tape rather than the normal tape I'm using, I'm going to tape the pull noodle and then tape up the end. So I'm just going to mark where this tape goes to, so I know where to start this tape. Right, now it's the second one. To finish off this section, I'm just going to use another little bit of tape just to tighten down this joint here. Final step in taping here is to put the collar on, which will keep the thrusting tip in place. Just straighten out this tape so it doesn't curl on me. It's important that you then rub down the tape to make sure it's stuck on really well, and a little bit of friction can really help with that. But then you've got your finished tape on your pompon. The final step to getting a usable pompon is to wrap your handle. Some rule sets won't require you to pad your handle, the Australian one does. So I'm going to be using a mountain bike handlebar tape. And so that's how you make a lovely pumpkin out of golf clubs that is nice and light. This one came out at 257 grams, and that's with a handle wrap. Woo!